Massachusetts Congressman Richard Neal, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, is our guest. Let's go on the record. He's one of the state's key power brokers in D.C. Can he keep Democratic priorities on the rails with 2022 midterms down the track? The chairman has the floor this morning.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR. I'm Janet Wu, along with News Center 5 political reporter Sharman Sacchetti. Ed is off this weekend. Joining us is Congressman Richard Neal. He is a Democrat representing the state's 1st congressional district. First taking office in 1989, he is currently chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. He holds degrees from American International College and the University of Hartford. Thank you for being here.
Great to see you, Janet. Nice to be with you, Sharman.
All right. Well, it looks like Democrats won't get the president's Build Back Better bill on his desk in time for Christmas. So is it done, or is it better to wait until next year?
I think it's better to wait to make sure that we get it right. But it's also consistent with an idea that I think has been underreported, and that is we've done 4 major packages during the last year and a half, including the rescue package from President Biden, which I thought was a very sound piece of legislation. His infrastructure bill is going to have far-reaching ramifications. And not to miss the point that Speaker Pelosi and I, along with former Secretary Mnuchin, we negotiated the CARES Act and then the HEROES Act in December. So the American economy was saved because of the position that we took that was very assertive. And I feel very strongly that getting this right is the most important element. The other key consideration, Sharman, here is Joe Manchin has really not softened his position in the last few weeks, even though there's been a lot of reporting as to the conversation that have taken place. I think that the president is going to have to meet him for further accommodation.
In light of inflation, prices are up. This is what really is on the minds of people right now going into the holiday season. So where does this go?
Well, I think that the inflation issue, it's a worldwide phenomenon now. As you note, the central banks across Europe, as well as the Federal Reserve Board, they've taken more assertive positions as we proceed to next year. But also, I think that the infrastructure legislation is going to provide more opportunity to more people immediately. So I do think that this will, in the end, I think the pressure on wage growth is going to increase. But I also think that the Fed shouldn't be using words like transitory. That's a Washington word. We should be addressing this from what people feel when they walk into a supermarket.
Speaking of Senator Manchin, Democrats have moved voting rights up on the priority list, at least the president has. This would not only deal with gerrymandering by both parties, Democrats and Republicans, but it also makes early voting and vote by mail a sort of a national mandate. Do Democrats have the votes to push this through past the Republicans?
Well, first, I think it's important to recognize that early voting and mail-in voting was wildly successful. And despite these protestations, despite these conspiracy theorists that have attempted to throw cold water on the success ratio, I think that the American people have become accustomed to mail-in voting and early voting. And again, it worked quite well.
But the Republicans don't think that if this happens, this helps them in the midterms. So the question is, do you think you can round up the votes? Can you get the Senator Manchins, for example, to come on board?
The matter, once again, rests in the Senate. And right now in the Senate, because of the 50-50 divide, you have 50 presidents on both sides.
But you're comfortable with the House? You think you'll get the votes in the House?
In the House, we can do it. Yes, there's no question about that.
The president tried to get a national vaccine mandate. Do you think that Governor Baker is making a mistake by not pursuing that here in Massachusetts?
No, I think that the decision that the governor will render eventually is going to be based upon the advice that he receives, I think, from the CDC. And I think that Dr. Mark Kerouac, the head of Bay State Medical Center, he has highlighted the need he believes, and I agree with him, perhaps to return to masking. I think that's a very good idea. It's very sound.
Would you like to see the governor institute a mask
mandate? I'd be
mandate?
inclined to support the idea of a requirement that there would be masking. We've had now almost 20,000 people in Massachusetts that have died, and the new variant, while there are still competing versions of what it means and for how long it'll be with us, I think that taking these precautions is a good idea.
Just as an announcement, all of us have been vaccinated here, as well as everyone that's in the studio today. Could President Biden be doing a better job of handling this pandemic, do you think? Only in the last week has he launched a program to make rapid tests more available. Isn't this the key sort of keeping American society open and safe?
Well, I think he's urged that everybody become vaccinated. I think that there's been some pushback by Republicans. There's been some pushback in red states, but I think the positions that he's adopted have been entirely sound based upon evidence and science. And I think that you can see that the blue states tend to be doing a better job with vaccination rates, including Massachusetts, than the rest of the country. And the booster that you ascribed earlier to our presence here has much to do, apparently, with making sure that it will not be as cruel as the Delta variant.
But the question is the rapid test, because even those of us that are vaccinated still potentially could spread it. And it's good to take a rapid test before, like, for example, the holidays, which a lot of us are going to be getting together with family from different states, from different communities that we haven't seen regularly. So the question is, has the president done enough to get these rapid tests out soon enough?
Well, I can tell you this, you can't go near the White House without having a test before you go in. It has to be done within 24 hours, and I think that across the country you can see now in New York and other cities that you can take the COVID test right on the street and have a rapid result right there. And I think that everybody should agree upon the fact that COVID testing is essential.
All right, a federal judge now says your committee should get former President Donald Trump's taxes. How optimistic are you that you will ever see them?
What he actually did, Justice McFadden did, he turned down the lawsuit that President Trump had brought against me. So it's an active case, so probably going to refrain from any specifics on the case, but it clearly was a victory that the judge said that he thought, even if the former president was right on the facts, that the Ways and Means Committee was right on the law.
Is it long past time for these to be public?
It's been 2.5 years since the case was filed, and every president since Richard Nixon has released their tax forms. And I think in this instance here, we want to get a better idea of how the Internal Revenue Service audits a presidential tax form.
Were you surprised that it took 2.5 years for the judge to just make this decision?
Very surprised, yes. And I think that this notion that 2.5 years, there's probably some time to go as well.
So in other words, do you think that you will see these taxes within the foreseeable future?
It's hard to predict, but I would say this, that I essentially suggested from day one that this was going to be a long and grinding court case, and I assume that the Supreme Court will render the final decision.
Okay.